Thank you, everyone, for the invitation to be here. I am very happy to join you and tell you about work that we're doing in the W3C that is forward-looking and you may not know about. So, I co-chair one of the working groups in W3C, and I'm going to walk through how W3C is organized and how we do our work and so forth. So I do have a co-chair who's head of web standards at Samsung. He's in London. He helped me get my slides lined up correctly because, you know, I don't do too well at that. I don't know if we got our pictures on the first slide there or not, but if he is on there, that's my co-chair. His name is Matthew Atkinson, and I'm very delighted to have someone, okay, let's face it, younger, because, you know, I'm not going to be here forever, though I'm not planning to go anywhere either. So if we can advance to the next slide, we're going to talk about the Accessible Platform Architectures Working Group in W3C. It is about accessibility, it is about architectures across the web platform. So we're going to talk about what our mission is, how we go about doing our work, and where and how you can interface to our work if, as I hope it will, it interests you and it's something you might want to help with some aspects of. Nobody does it all, none of us. There's just too much we need to look at. So looking at slide 3, if we can, let me back up and just talk about W3C itself. W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium, is the place where web standards are developed. It's not the only place, but it's by far the most well-recognized and the usual one that people think of when they think about developing standards. Other aspects of internet might be elsewhere, like the Internet Engineering Task Force. We're going to mention them a few slides later. But W3C is specifications, standards for web, standards so that you can choose which browser you want to use, standards you can choose which operating system you want to use, and hopefully have an accessible outcome. One that supports internationalization well, one that preserves your privacy, and one that is reasonably secure. Those are the 4 domains of W3C, what we call horizontal review. And I'll be saying more about horizontal review shortly. But at the W3C level, most of the groups were organized into working groups primarily. And then there's a governance structure where there's an advisory board, and anyone who's a paid member of W3C is got a spot on the advisory council, gets to vote on things. Those of us who are invited experts, as I am there, also have a representative on that council, but that's kind of the governance organization. So there's some bureaucracy. It's now a 501c3. Until just earlier this year, we were just sort of a little development inside of MIT, but I guess MIT decided we're no longer experimental and researchy, so they kicked us out. And we became a nonprofit under US law, and that's fine. It was about time. It's nice to see the web mature. So W3C, that's probably enough of W3C. If we move on to the next slide 4, the Web Accessibility Initiative is where all of the accessibility related work in W3C is kind of organized, and we do talk to one another and coordinate and so on and so forth. And here are probably some groups that you have heard of. For instance, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, WCAG, is developed by the Accessibility Guidelines Working Group. ARIA, which you probably have heard about if you do technology, is also its own working group in W3C WAI. We call it WAI, W-A-I, WAI. ARIA actually was first developed in a group that precedes the one I co-chair now. 2015, we were reorganized slightly and we got this new name, APA, Accessible Platform Architectures. Before that, I don't know how they came up with protocols and formats. It made no sense. We had all kinds of people showing up. You're going to talk about protocols. Okay, and they'd stay for the first meeting, and by the break they were gone and we never saw them again. Confused people. So it was a good reorganization. But the advisory council at the time decided that ARIA had grown up enough. We had too much going on. So they split it off. They became their own group, but it actually began in the predecessor to the group that I'm going to tell you about tonight. And that's important because we haven't stopped innovating. We haven't stopped developing. So WCAG basically describes what it takes to be accessible as we know controls and objects today on today's web. And yes, indeed, all kinds of international regulatory standards are based on that in the US and the EU, elsewhere around the world. We don't do that particularly. In APA, we have, if we can go to the next slide, please, we have two major activities in APA. We do two things specifically. First of all, we read everybody else's specification. If you're going to become a recommendation, a specification published by W3C, you have to go through this process that has been elaborated over the 20-some years that W3C has existed, where you get a lot of review. And one of the reviews, we call them horizontal reviews, is for accessibility concerns. We read everybody's spec and say, we don't have any issues with that. It's way too low level. Nothing comes up to a user interface level. We can pass on this. It looks fine. Or, well, we're not too sure about this area here. So initially, years ago, we would read the specs as they came to completion. We learned over time that it was much smarter to read them when they were in early development, so we could spot problems before they became serious. Because what we do with that, what we do with horizontal review, is inform the working group that generated the spec and say, we found some concerns, we'd like to express them to you, and let's work out how we can satisfy both of our groups with the outcomes so that we support accessibility and you get the API or whatever it is they're developing that they want to enhance the web technologies with. So we're one of 5 groups that does horizontal review. I don't know if all 5 of them are on the slide, but let me just name the other ones I mentioned a minute ago. Internationalization, which looks after questions of supporting multiple languages, and then of course privacy and security. All specs get reviewed for those 4: accessibility, internationalization, privacy, and security. Then there's an overarching group that sort of looks after how all of these things fit together. It's called the Technical Advisory Group. They read all the specs too. And basically everybody has to sign off on them or it doesn't become a recommendation. If there are trip points in there somewhere, we have a little checkbox, and until we check the box, it doesn't advance. So that's one of the 2 things we do. The other thing we do, which I'm going to actually spend most of my time talking about today, is where we find gaps, where we think somebody with accessibility needs is not being served as well as they could be. We tried to develop solutions. I mentioned ARIA was one of our early efforts in that area. If you remember way back to the late 1990s, a few people might be as old as me here and remember back to the 1990s. WCAG 1 did not allow you to have JavaScript. They told you just not to put script in it because we didn't know how to make it accessible. Well, you know, one of our members in our predecessor group says, well, we can fix this. And the fix became called ARIA. And that's how ARIA got started just about 20 years ago. And of course, it continues to develop. But that's the background of that. We've got more of that going on. And I'm going to delve into that now. For the remainder of the slides, we're going to be looking at some of our task forces, which is not a real thing that's in the process publication from W3C. Is something we do in W3C way. We establish underneath our working group, which is a thing, task forces to look at particular tasks and particular interests. So I want to walk you through several of our task forces. First of all, in the next slide, slide 6, our Cognitive and Learning Accessibility Task Force. We call it COGA for short, COG. Cognitive and Learning Disabilities, the first of about 6 task forces I'm going to tell you about. And I'll tell you about some of the work that's going on in each of them. before we get to the how you can interact with it part, which will be the closer. So cognitive and learning disabilities has two parents, us, APA, but also the people that do WCAG, the Web Content Guidelines. Because we want Web Content Guidelines, the description of how you deal with this today, to be informed and support the needs of people with cognitive and learning disabilities. Obviously, we wouldn't leave that out. But also we expected when we formed this group, we were expected that we would expose requirements for which there was not existing technology. And indeed, we have exposed some requirements for which there is not existing technology. And a few slides later, two parents, because we want to inform the current guidance, which ends up in regulations, WCAG, and we want to look forward to see what can we develop, like we did ARIA 20 years ago and in the years in between. And I will be telling you about some of that here fairly soon. But if we go on to the next slide, I'm just going to, there's a quick little image grab here of a key publication from COGA. We refer to it as content usable. It's really a description of people who live with different kinds of cognitive and learning disabilities and what kinds of factors affect them. So it's an informative document meant both to inform us in accessibility, in dealing with WCAG and developing new technologies, but also the wider W3C as to why and how these things that we ask for matter. And I'm pleased to say that I have a friend and colleague here with us tonight who's part of the COGA task force. So if I got any of that wrong, John, I know he'll correct me. Now we get to some of the task forces that are actually developing specifications. First of all, the one that has turned out to be the trickiest and most difficult to manage, we would like to develop a W3C specification that we can apply to web content where it matters, not necessarily to every word on every page, but where it really matters, perhaps for educational content or for testing content, so that it will get pronounced correctly, it'll have the right pauses in the right places, wind will get wind and wind will be wind and tears will be tears and there won't be tears in your eyes. And we can reliably use this again in the way we want all web content to work, across browsers, across operating environments, across mobile apps. That does not exist today. There is no way, not even.
Hey everyone, as you have observed, we have some sound issues. They're doing construction on the floor upstairs. I just called the building and asked them to refrain for 20 minutes. I'm not optimistic, but I'm hopeful. So give us a few minutes and we'll resume hopefully as soon as the engineer of the building talks to the contractor upstairs. I'm so sorry about that. And Yanina, if you would be so kind as to join us again in the near future, we would welcome you. So I'm so sorry for that.
Yeah, let's go to slide 17. Sure. You guys will have access to these, and there are links in there. You can get involved in any number of ways. You can get involved for a dime. You can get involved for $1, basically. We'd love to have your help in doing our work because we need help doing it. We're trying to do this creative stuff. We're trying to make it up, thinking about what technology can do. So if you monitor the Way Announce list, you will know when we are actually asking for the public to review our specs. That's kind of the easiest way to get involved. Read one of our documents. We usually publish for wide review at least twice before we try to actually finalize them. And we really, really take public comments very seriously. You can open a GitHub issue. All of our documents tend to be in GitHub. And we very much welcome comments and we will respond. We may not accept them all, but we'll tell you why we don't if we don't. And we can even go back and forth on that. And there's even an escalation process if you think we made the wrong decision. So all kinds of opportunities to get bureaucratic or better still to just really come up with good ideas. Then, of course, we welcome direct involvement and participation. If you work for a company that uses a lot of web technology, we'd love to have more members of W3C. There's a kind of a sliding scale. If you're big like Google and Amazon, you pay a lot more money than, you know, a small 4 or 5 person shop or whatever. I currently have a contractor that's I know is in 4 figures and not 5. So there are membership levels, and that gets you a vote on that advisory council, and of course the right to name to any working group you want in W3C. Last but not least, we have a category called invited experts, which means that if you think you have a skill we can use, and boy, if you do web technology, I can tell you right now, you have a skill we can use, because none of us knows all the aspects of it. And we eventually, because we review everybody else's specs, will run into things we don't know as well as we wish we did and wish we had another person on hand to help with. But you can absolutely put in an application, and we will take it seriously and contact you. And more often than not, you'll just get invited as an invited expert, and you can participate. We work in teleconferences generally. Most of our groups meet on Zoom once a week. We usually ask for a minimum of 4 hours of time during a week. So 1 hour will go to the teleconference, and the rest toward reading documents, making pull requests in GitHub and things like that, that, you know, one does as one develops documents as well as code. We don't have a lot of code going on. We have specifications which kind of get close to that, where there might be code examples of how you might implement something, but mostly it's textual kinds of things, but we do use GitHub extensively for that. So that's the how to get involved. My slide 18 was just a thank you slide, but if you go to the last slide, that's sort of like the pointer to our homepage, the Accessible Platform Architecture's homepage. Everything else, everything of how to get involved, everything about what we're working on, all of our different task forces are linked from under there. So it's like the top, you know, the root, and everything branches off of there. So you can find the ones I did tell you about, which was hardly any, and you can find all the rest of them. So hope that helps. And if it stays quiet, maybe with as much as I've said, you might have some questions, I suppose.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. There's actually a couple of questions in the street, if I may take
Yeah.
the mic. We're going to take a couple questions from the stream and then questions for the room. First question from the stream. For the spoken presentation task force, will the advent of contextually aware machine learning AI assist with that?
We are trying to be declarative and not intuit. Yes, AI could be helpful, and I think that that's kind of the direction the industry prefers to go, because they'd like to get smart and kind of just figure out on the fly which language you're using. My favorite example of why this is never going to work fully, why we still like human captions instead of AI-generated ones, is an Austrian Christmas carol, spelled S-T-I-L-L. If we spell it in English, it's actually auf Deutsch, it's German, S-T-E-L-L. And then the third time. Okay, that word works in English, but it also works very differently, pronounced differently in German. You'd never get that heuristically unless you read the context. And the AI was smart enough from the context to know that you'd actually flip languages in midstream. We are trying to be declarative. We're expecting that people, where it matters, again, this is not all content on screen, but this is where it really matters, perhaps in an SAT or an LSAT test. You want things pronounced correctly because you're being timed, among other things. You don't want to play games with that. So we're thinking of the inline language tag from HTML that switches language on the fly. And we'd like to be able to support pronunciation that's not just contemporary. So if you're reading history and you're reading 14th century French history, and there's a quotation from some document, it'll be pronounced as we think 14th century French was pronounced and not in contemporary fashion. Hope that answers.